This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for How to Super Age with Elise Marie Collins. And Elise, I have to give you a little bit of information because we talked about your book on super aging that I saw it in my doctor's office about a year ago. And so I ran into one of his nurses and I asked her, I said, how did he get the book? And she said, funny you should ask. One of his patients has been calling him a super ager. And she said, so for his birthday, we all went out online and looked up the word super ager, and we all got him something with the name in. So I told her that you do a podcast with me, and that is your book. And she goes, well, I think we need to start reading it, which I thought was really funny. I said, well, I wanted to know how we got it. And one of these days we have to have him on as a guest. So, hey, all our listeners have to do is, Google a word and they can come up with your books, especially the Chakra Tonics book.
Yes, I love that story. In fact, the funny thing is I told that story on our Mango, because I'm published by Mango, and our guest today is also a Mango author. I told that story on our Christmas gathering, our Zoom gathering, that you had your doctor, you're hosting my podcast, and then the doctor was like, you should read this book, Super Ager. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. Because we called it, like, I think dandelion stories, where it's like, you blow the dandelion and you never know where it will cast into the wind. I'm looking around. I don't know if I have Super Ager in front of me, but I do have my Chakra Tonics book, which I always get confused holding it up in the camera. There we go.
There you go.
So if you are listening, I'm holding up the book Chakra Tonics, Essential Elixirs for the Mind, Body, and Spirit. That's another one of my books, both of them, including Super Ager. They keep you healthy and wealthy, and I'm not talking monetary wealth, because all of the tips are pretty much low cost. I'd say everything is free or under $20, and you can keep yourself healthy with so many tips and tools. And they're included in my books. And I'm bringing this up because our guest today has so many tips and tools about staying healthy and wealthy in that way, where your mind is sharp, you're feeling connected to your body. Now, we all have off days, but the more we can attune, get that consistency in our lives, we're going to live better, we're going to age better. So that's why I'm really enthusiastic about our guest today. And I'm also excited because she's a buddy of mine, and she's another Mango author. We're published by the same publisher, and she is a very dynamic and wonderful human. I'm going to read her official short bio. Our guest today, in case you're just tuning in on How to Super Age, is Nita Sweeney, and she's an award-winning wellness author of several books. Depression Hates a Moving Target. You should be writing and make every move a meditation. She's an ultra-marathoner, meditator, writing practice, zealot, and mental health advocate. She's also a dog mom. So before everybody got on, my dog is settled in her chair. She's a Chihuahua, but I was holding her up to the camera, which she doesn't always like. So I may do it later, but for now, just know there's a little cute Chihuahua overseeing our recording of the podcast. And she's also the publisher of Right Now Columbus. So she's got her hands in many pots. And I think we'll not only glean wellness tips and tips about how to live well, but how do you stay so active? I mean, at any age, it's like, you're doing a lot, Nita. Anything else to add to your bio, or how do you do it all?
Oh my goodness. Batching, time blocks. My latest trick is I have another book I'm working on, which that's kind of another thing, but I wasn't getting to it as regularly as I wanted to. And so first thing, before I check email, get on social media, do anything else, the night before, I leave that book open on my computer so that when I turn it on the next morning, that's the first thing I see. And I just spend, even if it's 5 minutes, just staring at the page, because I'm in the editing process now. So yeah, blocks of time. There have been times when I go like to a hotel or a retreat or something to get a book done. But with the running, I have a structure. And I think the whole thing is really structure. That's part of the key for me. I'm very adaptive. I'm very high in adaptability. So I like to wing things. So I have to have a little structure so that I don't just wing myself out of doing anything. But, having a goal, for me, it's usually a goal race. And so having the training plan that sort of pulls me, that race pulls me toward the goal, and having a deadline with a writing project really helps. So that pulls me, and it has to be external. I am not internally motivated, have no shame about it. I need to set an external deadline. I'm always asking our editor, Brenda, if she requests something, and when do you need that? And when do you need that? Because she knows if she'll never get it if she doesn't give me a deadline. But I got that deadline, I'm locked in, boom. So yeah, and then I take a lot of time off in between so that I have the rest, because I just think sleep and rest and time away from screens is so important. That's part of why I like running outdoors, is because I might have my phone with me for safety, but I don't listen to music. It's just me in the woods and maybe some friends, often the dog. I have a yellow Labrador who's in another room because she's not always very quiet. So yeah, it's a great question, but structure is my support system.
I love that. And that is so important, especially because many of us, one important thing about any purpose and contribution is so important at any age across what we call the life course in gerontology. And your tips, that was a great one. I'm definitely going to do that, because there's so many things that, especially if they're something that we have a yearning to do, we'll just call it a yearning, such as write a book, such as, it could be something we're just planning out on our computer. And yeah, every day gets busy. Every day there's always, the dog to feed, the dog to walk, the parents to take care of, or many of us are caretakers, this and that and this and that. And then by the time we get started on our passion project, it's like 9 or 10 at night, we're exhausted, and we're like, oh, maybe tomorrow. So that was really, the value of the podcast right there. I love it. How did you start running? I mean, when did you begin, and how tell us about that journey?
That was an accident. So I've had chronic depression my entire life. And I've gone in cycles with it, but in 2007, I had 7 people and a cat that I loved all died, including my 24-year-old niece, my father-in-law, and then finally in December, my mother. And I was in grad school, so that sort of carried me for a little while. But once that ended, I just spiraled. And I was sitting on the sofa one day, probably eating bonbons. I'm not really sure, but I saw this social media post of a high school friend that said, "Call me crazy, but this running is getting to be fun." And I had not ever thought of the word run and fun like that they were in the same universe at all. So I watched her, and she was doing an interval training plan. And eventually, I live in Central Ohio, where it gets very cold in the winter and snowy. And when spring came around and the crocuses started to come up through the snow and the snowbells, little flowers, I got more curious, more brave. And I saw that her training plan said 60 seconds of jogging. Now, it said other things, but that stuck with me. It seemed manageable, doable. So I leashed up the dog, took him down to this hidden ravine where the houses are set like way back up because it's a floodplain, and jogged for 60 seconds. I had a kitchen timer, one of those little digital kitchen timers. I mean, it was probably pink sweatpants. I mean, Velcro shoes. I mean, I had no gear, but I just had to do something because I was on medication. I was seeing therapists. I had a strong meditation practice, which I think was still very helpful. But movement was the missing component. I know now, those happy brain chemicals you get from that. And, things didn't change overnight, but over the course of a number of years, it became something that I just love to do. And I found, again, a structure with a group, with a goal. And I always say, if you hang around with people, actually, the phrase is, if you hang around in a barbershop, eventually you're going to get a haircut. And I hang around with people who are in their 60s and 70s who run ridiculously long distances for fun. And so they make it seem possible because they do it. So that's how it started. And that's kind of how it got to where it is. You did mention, I can't remember the exact word you used, but the thing that got me out of the ravine, because I swear I'd still be down that ravine just running in private, was a charity race, because my sister asked me if I wanted to do this 5K that raised money for cancer research for the type of cancer my niece had died from. And at first I was like, no, private runner, no. And then I got over myself. And that opened up a world that I did not know existed, a world of runners of all shapes, all sizes, all ages, races, you name it, the whole kit and caboodle. And I love that energy. And so, yeah, I just keep signing up for another race, and that pulls me toward that goal. And yeah, so that's how it began. I think that's probably, I tend to give long answers to short questions. So yeah, it's all in the first book too, by the way.
Yeah.
I wrote a book about
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Depression Hates a Moving Target, because that's been my reality, is that movement has helped me get off. I'm still on one med, but I was on 6 meds for my mental health. I still see a therapist. I have a psychiatrist, all that, but I had books I wanted to write. And now I have, this whole, you can see back there, couldn't finish a book, or couldn't do didn't have the stamina to get those projects done. Didn't have the emotional stability to deal with publishing people, to do that whole thing that you have to do. Just didn't have any of that. So yeah, I suggest movement. That's possibly the missing piece for a lot of people.
I love that. And I love the internal movement and the external movement. The journey there, it was very provocative, going from the ravine. You're a great storyteller. So I know you're a good writer, and I love your writing. You didn't say you were hiding, but I get the,
oh, absolutely.
I get the picture.
Oh,
yeah.
And the best part is nobody was home. I mean, I live in a suburban neighborhood where everybody used to go to their jobs. This was, back in the early 2010s. So I was mostly hiding from my own fear, but I was, hiding is exactly it. You nailed that.
Yeah, I love it. And then, oh yeah, did you want to say something, Karen?
Well, I think a lot of us, can relate to what you're saying, Nita, that, we know that we need to get up and do something, but we don't think that either we're capable of doing it, or like you said, who thinks of walking and running as something to be fun? We run because of fear, and we walk because, we have to get from our car to the store. But other than that, we think that's a lot of work. But until we do it, and like you said, you finally found that goal, but you also found camaraderie. And I think that is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think everybody has to find their thing. So the thing that actually got me out of the ravine was a heart thing. It was a charity cause that I could feel in my heart. But what kept me going was eventually joining a group. And, they always tease me. It's like, yeah, Nita's only interested in breakfast, which is possibly true because we go to breakfast after we run. But I found that, like you said, that camaraderie, that community, I sort of found it at the race, but then I found a specific group later. And then for some people, it's the actual goal. They need that kind of shiny gold star thing, or the numbers. They need the statistics. And so the thing I say is find what the thing is, what your thing is, because we're all so different. Each of us, everybody has their own kind of thing. And maybe running and walking isn't your thing. Maybe you need a team sport, or maybe you need something very competitive, or maybe you need something even more internal, although yoga has external also, but it's, it's kind of a deeper thing. So maybe you need the really slow yoga, or the, there's the yin and yang of yoga. So there's just so many options. And I think especially for me, I'll speak for myself, because I do have mental health challenges that I still, deal with every day. My mind is always going to the negative, even as well as I am now, as much better as I feel. And so there's always that other part of me, that more adult, rational part, that has to go, now, wait a minute, let's question that idea. Let's ask some questions. And yeah, because I think you're exactly right, Karen, is we just think, oh, what fun, where is the fun in this? Well,
Exactly.
we have to find it. So.
Yeah. And I love the way you say that your thing, find your thing, find that thing. That is a great, we might be taking that from you. I'll give you credit, but for super aging, what is that thing? Because we all need that thing. We can have our health, but if we don't have that thing, we don't have that reason, that purpose, that contribution that we're giving to the world, then it really does affect our health. It does affect, and I'm saying health broadly, mentally, physically, and they all go together, as I know, and which kind of brings me maybe to, let's touch on meditation, because that's another one of the things you talk about in your writing, and that has been so powerful for you in your life. How did you get into meditation, and how has it helped you? Oh, and I know you've been doing it for a while. I'm not sure how long, but tell us about how your meditation practice has supported you and all the things you do.
Oh, those are great questions. We could be here all day, but I'll answer the first question first, because it's my favorite line. My most recent book is called Make Every Move a Meditation. Make every move a meditation. And my favorite line in the book is, there was this guy, because I was dating a man, and we were early in our relationship, and he said, "You want to sit?" And I said, "You want to what?" Because I'd heard about meditation, but I just didn't really have any experience with it. And he'd been meditating probably for 4 or 5 years then. And so that guy's now my husband. We've been married 29 years and have been meditating together for over 30 years. He's probably been at it, 35 now. And I'm a certified meditation teacher. And so he just told me, my first instruction was essentially try not to fidget. He set the microwave timer for 5 minutes, and he said, try to focus on your breath if you can, but mostly just try not to fidget. And that's actually really good advice. Just, and I fidgeted, and it was hard. And at first I wasn't sold at first, but then I had some other issues. That's all in the book too, that meditation really helped with after those things arose. And I saw that there were benefits beyond just calm and concentration. I mean, actual physical benefits to it. So that's how I got started. And eventually I did fall in love with it. And, we actually brought in teachers for a number of years. We brought in like Bhante Gunaratana, who's the Buddhist monk. We brought in a number of insight teachers and spirit rock teachers who would come to Columbus. And then we moved away for a while. And then when we came back, it wasn't the time. You can't step in the same river twice kind of thing. So it wasn't the thing for us to do. I was really focused on my writing. And so yeah, but let's talk about the benefits. So I really believe that the meditation helped me so much with probably calm and clarity, because I had mental health issues, and I was taking medication and going to therapy, but I'm not sure those things would have helped as much as they did if I hadn't also been meditating. So again, it wasn't a total fix. I feel like I need all three. I need the writing for my mind. I need the meditation for, kind of spirit, or just that, I don't know. It's not like woo-woo spirit, like out there, but my spirit. And then the movement for energy and vitality and stuff. And that was the big missing piece. So I had the meditation, but once I started the movement, when I started running, when I realized I could combine them, where I could meditate while I was running, which I explain in that book, because a lot of people go, huh, how could you do that? That's when things really started to click. So I had kind of the whole package there. And it just, the ability to focus, the ability to be uncomfortable and not react immediately. I don't know, just this sort of sense of, I want to say we're all connected, but it's more of a just sense of being part of something, even when you're not in a community, just being connected to everything that there is. And so there's just sort of this greater thing. And then one of the biggest things, which I think I can talk about here, which I don't always talk about because people don't really get it, is the insight part of it, is that as a human being, I'm actually much more wave than particle. Mm-hmm. So this sense that I'm this fixed being, and yes, I have a sense of self, and yes, I have an identity, but that it's changing and flowing, and then I can let that happen, and that I behave better when I do, let's just say. So that's a big part of it too. And then I also talk about the way my meditation teacher talks about emotions, and that's been really helpful, sensing that they're not these solid, again, the more wave than particle, not these solid, hard things that we have to deal with, but that they flow, and that there's, body sensations and thoughts and stories we make up. And just, so I feel like I'm not being very specific, but it's just, that's like such a huge question. It's everything. It's very much the same things with the movement, the same physical, emotional, psychological benefits. And
I'm really glad that you talked about the fact that you can meditate when you run, because a couple of years ago I was walking every single day, and I should get back into it, but I use the excuse it's cold or it's icy, for my reason not to walk. But I found that's what I was doing when I was walking. I was meditating. I could feel the air. I could hear birds that if I had tried to listen, I wouldn't have heard them. But I was in such a calm place as I was walking. But when I first started walking, I was more aware of who sees me walking. Am I walking right? Am I walking? I mean, there is no right or wrong, but that's how I felt, until all of a sudden it just came to me that, just feel what you're going through. And I felt mentally healthier then. And so I sometimes, ask myself, like, why aren't you back out there doing it? And it's like, I have to kick myself and start up all over again.
Well, or you need a goal, maybe, I don't know, or a friend. I'm not a big fan of the kicking myself. Sorry, but
Okay.
I'm not, just because I think it doesn't work, or it might work for a little while, but we have to find that joy. So I'm really glad you said that, though, because like the listening, oh my gosh, where even in the middle of the winter, there'll be like the snapping of twigs, or there's like a crunch sound that happens. You're in Cleveland, I'm in Columbus, and so we both have a similar winter situation. Sure. And then in the spring, when the birds come out, oh my gosh. And then I use scent too, because it's the woods. I usually walk or run in a woods, and that smells very different in the winter than it does in the spring, than it does in the summer. And so that not grabbing for those things, but just like you said, things that you wouldn't even notice, but you choose to be open to them. And that's meditation, that awareness, that's the practice. So thank you for sharing that. That's great.
Thank you.
And I encourage you, I think you'll find something. You'll find a way to get back out there. You just have to find your thing. We talked about.
Yeah. I love all those layers of observing, the urge. And then what I noticed too, because it's something I'm trying to eliminate, is I should, have to, need to, must. And do I really need to? Do I really have to? Must I? Should I? Me, or change it to want to, if it's true. Do I want to? Because yeah, my mind will always say, you should do this. And yeah. And like Nita pointed out, where's the joy? It doesn't sound joyful. And then I really don't want to if I'm telling myself I should. Yeah. So many great tips. Another thing I'll just add, because it keeps popping in my mind, but neurogenesis is so important at any stage of life, but creating those new neurons and all those activities you're talking about, meditation, movement, running, they all help us to build more brain cells, which helps us keep resilient and keep our mind sharp. And another topic we could talk about for an hour or more. But I wanted to ask you a couple more things, like what I know you said there are 3, like, how do you, oh, I do have wait, I want to ask you this question. I almost forgot about it, but like, what do you do when there's something in the moment, like somebody says something, because there was something you said in like somebody says something and it's upsetting, because this happened to me yesterday. Somebody said something upsetting to me, or they were talking to me and I was just getting upset, and I'm in the middle of my work day. I could move my arms, I could do a few yoga moves, but I got to keep going in my day. I don't have time to do a formal sitting. What do you do in those moments when you want to kind of get back on track in your day, but you don't have time for a full-on practice?
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, you can start your day over at any point. And so if that for you, that means a cup of tea, it means a cup of coffee, a tiny ritual. But mostly the practice helps, practicing when there's no stakes. So practicing in the grocery line when you're irritated because you're in the 15-item line and somebody's got 16 items. So being able to be with that. Now, that's not as triggering as someone saying something unkind or critical, but it's the same. There's a similar flavor to the discomfort, because the body sensations kind of come in 3 flavors. They're pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And so practicing when there's no stakes is what helps me eventually deal with that. But the thing in the moment is to pause, is to be able to just, maybe drop my attention, if I'm standing, into my feet, if I'm sitting, into my butt or my back against the chair, just dropping my attention into this moment, noticing the sensations. Because usually when something like that's an input, and when there's an input, then there's a reaction. And it's maybe not an action, but there's a physiological thing where there's sensations in your body someplace. Sometimes it might be a tightening in the throat. It might be, I know you talk chakras, but it might be in the throat. It might be the crown. It might be, in your, I don't know what the chakra is, but that's in your belly, like right by your belly button. I get that a lot. Some people get a tight chest. Just noticing those and not making them go away, but just letting them be and sensing the fact that you are currently enduring them, that you don't actually have to make them go away. And in fact, part of that wave versus particle thing, they will arise, do their little dance, and pass on their own. Because what often happens is when we have interactions with people, is there's no pause between our the critical statement and then my response, which is a reaction. And what I want the time to let the emotions settle so that I can make a informed decision about how I'm going to respond. And so a lot of times I default to just not say anything, or I need some time to think about that. But inside, I'm taking a little inventory. I'm doing a little scan. Where am I feeling that in my body? And then also noticing what's going on in my head, which often there's a story happening. Oh, this is going to mean this, or this person, is feeling that. And I'm making stuff up. Whereas if I can just stay with the pure sensation or the first thought as it arises, I'm much likely to react in a way that I will then have to, make amends for or fix or something. So, excuse me, but yeah, so that's that pausing. And then eventually, if after the interaction is over, finding a way to start my day over so that I'm not carrying that all day long. But, it's with you, it's in you now. And, but I think that the biggest thing that meditation taught me is that I don't have to make everything go away. And I don't have to hide. I'm tougher than I thought, and things will just pass. if I just don't add, I don't add, like I don't stir it up, I don't add to the fuel, they will pass. So those have been two of the big gifts of the practice. It's a great question, Elise. I'm sorry that happened to you.
Oh, no, yeah, but that was a great tip. Yeah, because I think oftentimes there's a kind of, for me, it was like, oh, I have, at this time I was planning to do, like you said, the blocking, I have a block things that I'm supposed to be accomplishing, when actually taking that time, even if it was just to feel the sensations, is more important, and it's going to make me more productive. So that ability to pivot is critical. And I love the way you framed it, restart your day, because that just has a nice, we could all often restart our day. Sometimes we get started on the right note, foot, whatever you want to call it, but then sometimes we need that. And a cup of tea, a cup of coffee is a great way to do it. Or a chakra tonic.
Yep.
Oh, there you go. That's what I should have said. Excellent. Yes, we need chakra tonic.
That may be my new thing too. God, we're getting so many things that we can all use in our work and in our lives. I wonder if I know you mentioned that you were giving a seminar on 3 practices or 3 ways you help people with, maybe like that aren't meditators, or I would just love to hear, I just love hearing your practice tips, and maybe, which practice, I'm thinking it's different today and maybe even tomorrow, or is there a certain practice in your life right now? I know that I just throw lots of questions, but let's start with, is there a way you teach people, maybe beginners, I know they're in your books, but I'm encouraging everyone to read Nita's book. She's a fabulous writer. And as you can see, she's just got a plethora of information. How do you just start with beginners, and give them some structure and some tips?
Well, it depends on where they're coming from. So usually I start by asking a lot of questions. And the first one is always, what's on your mind? Or where are you right now? What's at top of mind right now? And then from that, it also depends on who they are, because I work with athletes, I work with lawyers, I work with writers, I work with a bunch of people. So it depends on what their thing is. But if somebody is new, let's say to meditation, we usually do start with the breath, because everyone breathes, and so they can't say, oh, I don't breathe, so I can't do that. So you start with that, and I start by asking them, just inviting them to notice where in the body they naturally feel the breath. Because some people are, mouth breathers, chest breathers, deep abdomen breathers, it depends. So again, tailoring it to them. But so that's probably like the tiniest place. If it's someone who's trying to get into some sort of movement, again, I ask them questions about, well, what do you like? Do you like being with people? Do you like to be alone? Do you like to be on a team? Do you like, competition? And again, find out who that person is, so I can help them find their thing. And it's very similar with writing. What kind of books do you read? What's the thing you love, or what do you dream of writing? Is there a book that you've dreamed of writing, or an article or an essay? So it's about it's like meeting people where they are. Because I also have worked with people who got several books published or have run tons of races, and so you just have to find them where they are. But the 3 things, let me say about that, we've actually touched on those. So for me, my 3 things are: the movement is running, the practice that is kind of inner is meditation, and then the other thing is writing, which it can be what a lot of people would call journaling. I call it writing practice the way I do it. It could be taking notes after you've come back from a workout and just recording, oh, my left knee felt weird, and I really like playing pickleball with Tom. I want Cheryl's unicorn hat. It could be anything like that. But just because there's something that happens when you record an event, and then your assessment of it, so that you can look back later, see where you've come from. But that processing, it's just a different way of processing. So for me, those are the 3 things: it's movement, meditation, and writing. And those, it's like a 3-legged stool. I have to have all 3 of those for the stool to stand. And I think I was missing the movement one. I had the meditation and the writing for years, but I needed the movement for the stool to really stand.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah. So, and that, and so you got the writing and the meditation and then the movement, like, and it sounds like that's when things kind of took off.
I pulled it all together.
Yeah, I love that. And now you're really an inspiration to so many people. I know that you studied with Natalie Goldberg, and I remember getting her books. I was working at a psychic reader a long time ago, and they sent her books, and I reviewed them. How did you meet her? And tell us a little bit about working with Natalie Goldberg, and maybe tell us who she is, because not everybody knows who she is.
Yeah, so she's a best-selling author. The book that most people know her for is called Writing Down the Bones, or maybe Wild Mind, but she's actually written 15 books. Her most recent is about haiku. It's called 3 Simple Lines, and it's an elegant book about her travels in Japan and the history of haiku. It's a beautiful book. But yeah, so one of the women who, oh, actually, no, the way it started was while I used to be an attorney long time ago, like 3 lifetimes ago, and I was practicing law, but my partner at the time and I, this was pre-ed, drove to Dayton, about an hour away, and we went to this great bookstore called Books and Company. And I always went through the writing book because I secretly really wanted to be a writer. I was doing a lot of writing as a lawyer, but I wanted to be a writer. And so I would always go to and I pulled off this book, Writing Down the Bones. I thought, oh, this is fascinating. So I read it, like at least 5 or 6 years before I stopped practicing law. And I was actually doing her writing practice as a way to write legal briefs. So after I stopped practicing law, which is a whole story in itself, part of which is in the books, one of the women who joined our meditation group had actually gone to Taos and studied with Natalie. And I didn't realize, I hadn't, it was sort of sort of like the edge of the beginning of the internet. So you couldn't just Google somebody, and she probably didn't have a website then or like that. So I got ever so slightly obsessed, because that's what I do. And I don't know, a couple of years later, I actually went to Taos and studied with her, took one of her workshops they were week-long workshops. There were like 60 people at Mabel Dodge Loan House. And I just fell in love. I fell in love with her, not her as a person, because you don't know somebody when you just take a class from them, but I fell in love with the practice, with that reading aloud, the whole kind of, because she combines writing with Zen. She's a Zen practitioner, so she combines that meditation. And of course, I was a meditator, so it all just felt really like a good fit. And eventually, after I think I'd gone to 2 workshops, my husband was in transition with his job, and I was in transition with my situation. And so we sold everything we owned and moved to Taos to study, so I could stay with Natalie all the time. And we lived there for 3 years, and I was her assistant from then until like 7 years later. So I was her assistant for about 10 years. And by assistant, I mean, I just would help her at the workshops, especially if she could see that I was a person who was pretty intuitive. And so if somebody was struggling, she'd send them to do some writing practice with me to talk about, answer questions and things like that. And yeah, so I worked with her just a few times a year, but we became pretty close, and I'm still in touch with her, and I consider her a good friend and a great mentor. So yeah, and the writing practice, and again, it's a little different because it's writing as a practice. So you do these timed writings with no comment, and you read aloud to another individual or a small group with no comment. So it's not about critique. Now, eventually you can use that process to write longer works, and then you get feedback, and you have to learn to edit and things like that. But in that initial raw stage, it was perfect for me because I was so terrified of criticism and didn't know what I was doing as a writer. And so it was a great way to find my voice and figure out what my passions were and all of those kinds of things. So yeah. And then after about 3 years, we realized that Taos really wasn't the right place for us. And I just had the continuing mental health issues. And so I came back to what is home for me, so I could be closer to family and back to the doctors that I knew and things like that. So we've been back here since. But yeah, that was a crazy, great adventure. I mean, whose husband would, after you've been to Taos twice, he'd never been there. And he went with me once, and we sold, he put the house on the market. And I think we thought the house would take longer to sell, and it sold in like 3 days. So, oops.
But it was meant to be. And how interesting too, because I know there's timeline and it's on your books, but I just want to point out for everybody, it's kind of a synchronicity. It sounds like when you first heard of Natalie Goldberg, you weren't a meditator, and then you simultaneously became a meditator. And I'm not sure if I'm getting this right, but then when, it all sort of like pieces are falling into place. And often that does happen. We do have to listen to the little quiet voice that's kind of urging us along. It sounds like you're doing a really good job of that. Is there any practice or anything that's really you want to leave with our listeners, something that's working for you now, something that's really bright and fresh that we haven't discussed?
Yeah, that's great. For me, it's the doing the thing that I want to be doing that I'm not doing first thing before I get on social. Now, some people might not be able to do that because they have kids, or would require getting up extra early, or if they have to go someplace to a job. My job's right here in my house. So, but finding that space before the rest of the world gets in, or for some people, maybe it's at night, but finding that very protected time where you're just doing that thing. And it was painful at first to not open my computer and check email and hop on social media. That was painful but having that document there, so it's staring at me first thing in the morning. It's been great. It's been a real changer for me. So again, it's a structure, and it's so I guess that's the tip, is find your structure. And if it's not working, try something else. Just because Stephen King does it doesn't mean it's right for you. So find the thing that works for you. We're back to that thing again. I'm a big thing person now.
Yeah, I can hear that Lauryn Hill song. Anyway,
Yep. Everything's a cue for a song, I know.
I love it. It's been so wonderful to talk to you, and I love that you underline that practice, because that's something that, like, oh, I'm swirling on that. How am I gonna rearrange my day? But before I get too distracted, how can we find your book, and where can we find your book and find you?
Well, the best place to find all my books and anything about me and my newsletter, which I would love people to sign up for my newsletter, is on my website, and it's nitasweeney.com. So it's just my name, NITASWEENEY.com. And hop on the newsletter, and that's really the best place. There's all kinds of places, but that's the one where you'll really get me directly.
Keep it simple. I love it. Any final questions or comments, Karen?
Oh, I've just been soaking it in and realizing that I too have just been making excuses for not finding the things that I really want to do in life. And so I'm going to have to read a few of your books to re-encourage me, but I think I'm on the right track now.
Well, that's great. I encourage you to be really, really gentle with yourself. And remember, 60 seconds of jogging. If it had said 3 minutes, no, I wouldn't. 60 seconds. So that's,
like that.
But I'll be looking forward to hearing how that goes and
how
hearing
wonderful.
your
Yes.
success. And thank you both. Thanks, Elise. Thanks, Karen. I always appreciate a chance to, share. I feel like I've had a success story and that I can inspire, and that makes me so happy. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. And to both of you, I'm wishing you a happy holiday season, however you choose to practice and observe. And let's all stay healthy for 2023. Talk to you all soon. Bye-bye now.